Amazing orphaned girl discovers her hidden strengths after saving a billionaire in a crash. Mia's palms were sweaty as she clutched her textbooks, dreaming of more than the small Montana town she called home. When she learned James was a tech mogul, she couldn't help but feel an aching desire for a life beyond her own. Her job at the diner barely scraped by, and each day she poured coffee while questioning her place in a world that seemed to revolve around wealth and privilege. On this stormy night, everything shifted as she walked those winding mountain roads, insecurities gnawing at her. She thought of the younger kids she mentored, the sparks of hope she saw in their eyes. It was the only light in her otherwise dreary existence. Suddenly, the screech of tires dragged her from her thoughts. Flashes of headlights swerved alarmingly close to the edge. Her heart raced. She had seen too many accidents in this slick weather. The car spun wildly before crashing into the cliffside, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Without a second thought, she dashed forward, adrenaline free-flowing. She reached the wreck just as flames licked the edges, and she wrested James out of the ruins. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, yet she held on, dragged him away with sheer will. Just moments later, the fire exploded behind them. Amid the chaos, James's grateful eyes met hers, igniting an unexpected bond. As they stood, a world opened that Mia never imagined possible: luxurious parties and high-profile gatherings. But along with the shimmering allure came the sharp edges of judgment. In elite circles, whispers followed her, cold glances filled with disdain. She felt like a green thumb among the roses, an outsider among the prosperous, where she was constantly reminded of her humble background. James brightened through dark clouds. He recognized her potential. They dove into coding together, and as lines of code filled her screens, Mia discovered a fiery passion in her soul. But mounting pressure followed her like a shadow, as James's name began swirling around in scandalous rumors. The once celebrated entrepreneur faced a storm threatening to demolish everything they built. Anxiety coiled tight within her chest. Witnessing someone on the brink of losing everything felt painfully reminiscent of her own life as an orphan. With Emma's assistance, Mia devoted herself to crafting an app, and their collaboration whirled into a connection built on mutual aspirations and quiet brokenness. Emma, shallowly drowning in her father's legacy, yearned for validation beyond wealth. They both masked insecurities beneath laughter and understanding, creating their own sanctuary amidst chaos. But then came the realization: if James fell from grace, what would that mean for Mia? Battling betrayal by association gnawed at her. This was her chance. Could she shatter the feigned smiles and choose integrity over her dreams?
Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Determination surged within Mia, yet guilt loomed large. Should she expose the truth that would set her free, or protect James, a man who believed in her when she had only been defined by loss? The crowd gathered around her, anticipation palpable as she took a breath and prepared to speak. James caught her eye, a mere eyebrow raise sending an electric shock through her. What was expected of her? Loyalty or ambition? She scanned the faces of the judgmental crowd, feeling their incredulity prick her spirit once more, the path unwinding in uncertain directions. With a heavy heart and a mind racing with questions, Mia stood at the precipice of decision, a singular moment capable of altering her life forever. Would she step into the light, or retreat back into the darkness of her past? The weight of her choice pressed down, the moment stretching on indefinitely, leaving her poised right at the edge of something life-changing. Mia felt the air thicken around her, the whispers of the crowd wrapping around her like a suffocating vine. As she stood there, suspended in that fleeting moment, her chest constricted. The stakes had never been higher, and the memory of her past, marked by neglect and disappointment, loomed like a shadow hovering at the edges of her mind. What she wanted more than anything was clarity, a beacon to guide her through the storm brewing in her heart. The crowd, with their eager eyes, seemed to demand a verdict. Loyalty to James clashed violently with her new identity. She was no longer merely the girl from the diner, but a potential player in a life she had long desired. Yet she wasn't willing to sacrifice her integrity for that ambition. Taking a deep breath, Mia turned inward. What was she truly afraid of? The unknown, or the familiarity of a life lived under someone else's influence? Her recent foray into technology had awakened a side of her that yearned to create, to innovate. Coding alongside James and Emma had brought an understanding of her own intellect, a clarity that until now had been buried beneath layers of survival instincts. Maybe this is the moment that defines me, she thought. James's expression shifted slightly, an encouraging intensity flooding his gaze that pierced through her insecurity. It was a reminder that he saw her as someone capable, someone more than a mere anecdote in his own narrative. That flicker of connection ignited Mia's resolve. Perhaps she could carve out a space in this world that others seem to claim as theirs, not through deceit, but through raw authenticity. As the realization settled in, she opened her mouth to speak, the words lodged firmly in her throat. "What do I want to be?" she whispered to herself at the core of her thoughts. In that moment, an insight struck like lightning. The app she was building with Emma was not just about technology. It was an extension of her, and it held promise for others as well. A spark of innovation twinkled behind her eyes. What if, instead of choosing sides, she chose to forge her own path? This could be her opportunity to showcase her talent, to rise above the glitter of superficial judgments. With newfound confidence igniting her spirit, she turned back to the crowd, the tumult inside her transforming into a powerful wave. "I can't just sit back," Mia declared, her voice steady, stronger than her latest self-doubts. "I believe in integrity and helping others, not falsehoods." The room fell silent, and she realized her declaration might have consequences. But as she scanned the surroundings, her doubts faded. She saw a glimmer of understanding in some eyes, even respect. James's expression had morphed into one of surprise, pride intermingling with relief. She hadn't just stuck to her own truth, she had cemented her purpose. The room buzzed with tension, but those electric threads began to weave a new narrative for her. Changing the script wasn't merely about James's downfall. It was about stepping up as a creator, a warrior of her own dreams. But the challenge that lay ahead loomed larger than an app. She would now have to navigate through the fallout of her decision, unsure of the alliances she would forge or break in the process. Just as Mia felt a surge of power rush through her veins, the room began to chatter once again. The time has come to face everyone watching, including her fears, she thought. Would her decision render her a beacon of light or plunge her deeper into darkness? Each heartbeat throbbed with the weight of consequence. She had ignited a spark. Now it was up to her to fuel the flame or let it flicker out. No longer merely defined by the past, Mia stood poised for the unknown ahead, a moment of resolution drawing closer. Mia felt the lingering echoes of her words hanging in the air like a taut string, resonating well beyond the confines of the room. The crowd murmured, a blend of skepticism and intrigue filling the void where silence reigned just moments before. Each face reflected a potential ally or adversary, but Mia's focus was singular now, her own truth, the embodiment of a journey she had only just begun to grasp. What did it mean to be a creator? She had always navigated her life avoiding direct confrontation, sidestepping conflict to survive. But today was different. Today, she had announced her presence unapologetically. The realization began to crystallize. To create was to confront, to challenge the status quo, and perhaps most dauntingly, to stand alone if necessary. Mia's heart raced at the prospect. James, still illuminated within a halo of admiration, shifted closer. "You surprised everyone, Mia. I didn't see that coming." His praise was an electric jolt that coursed through her, urging her to embrace the confidence she had just discovered. Yet it was the vulnerability in his voice that unsettled her. It was a reminder of the unspoken ties that wove them together. His allegiance was a double-edged sword. Could she trust it in this unsteady environment? As Mia battled with this intertwining of loyalty and independence, her mind swirled with ideas about their app, a tool for others, for creators like herself, seeking authenticity in a digital landscape riddled with pretense. The vision crystallized further. She could devise a platform that not only encouraged innovation, but fostered community, bridging the gap between creators yearning for their voices to be heard. With her internal resolve turning to action, Mia's gaze shifted around the room, seeking out Emma. She spotted her sitting at a table, fingers drumming an anxious rhythm, a reflection of Mia's own internal chaos. Closing her eyes momentarily, Mia envisioned their shared ideas, the late nights spent debugging code, the arguments over design choices, laughter interspersed with frustration. Then the moment she had feared coalesced in her mind. What if Emma found her sudden conviction disconcerting? The truth began to seep in slowly. She had to bring Emma along on this journey, but how would that work? Would she still embrace the vision they once shared, or would Mia's new path corrode their partnership? The very balance that allowed them to collaborate was now a potential fracture. Determined, Mia steeled herself, gliding toward Emma. Their eyes met, and for an instant, Mia hesitated. "We need to talk," she said, feeling the weight of the words as they fell between them. Emma arched an eyebrow, her worry palpable. "You mean about everything you just said? This is serious, Mia. You're challenging a lot." "Yes, and I need you with me. I don't want to do this alone," Mia insisted, urgency and sincerity lacing her tone. Mia watched as Emma's expression shifted from concern to contemplation. And what if we fail? She wasn't merely questioning the idea, she was challenging Mia to dig deeper. "Then we learn and build again. I can't go back to being silent," Mia replied, every ounce of conviction she felt reflected in her words. As they delved deeper into the intricacies of their vision, the very foundation of their collaboration began to shape. Mia discovered that opening herself up to honesty was not only a pathway for her, but might serve to strengthen their partnership. But as their conversation deepened, new fears loomed. What if the unsteady alliances she was forging began to crack under pressure? Would those who had once been her allies turn to enemies simply because she sought to redefine her own boundaries? In that moment, the room around her faded, becoming a backdrop for the whirlwind of emotions cascading through her. Personal integrity was her chosen habitat, but would others respect it, or would her journey dilate her world into isolation? As they finalized their ideas, the crowd behind them began to coalesce, and she felt the memory of previous expectations heavy in the air. Mia understood this was not just a matter of innovation, it was a test of her resolve, a revealing of her hidden strengths birthed out of shadows. But there, lurking in the undercurrent of their project, lay the daunting question. Would her newfound strength be enough to shield her from the encroaching shadows of her past? The time had come for her to confront her greatest fear, the ability to shine not just for herself, but for those who weighed in her life. Summoning her courage, she turned to Emma. "Let's show them what we can create." And as they locked eyes, a storm of uncertainties swirled around them, amplifying the tension. Amidst the promise of authenticity, a new challenge looming on the horizon urged Mia forward. Would she be a catalyst for change, or would the fear of unknown repercussions tether her to the past? The time had come for her to confront her greatest fear, the ability to shine not just for herself, but for those who weighed in her life. Summoning her courage, she turned to Emma. "Let's show them what we can create." And as they locked eyes, a storm of uncertainties swirled around them, amplifying the tension. Amidst the promise of authenticity, a new challenge looming on the horizon urged Mia forward. Would she be a catalyst for change, or would the fear of unknown repercussions tether her to the past? A flicker of uncertainty ignited deep within her. Mia knew this was just the beginning. Mia felt the weight of her words settling heavily, yet exhilaratingly in her chest. As she and Emma prepared to take the plunge into their shared vision, her mind churned with both excitement and trepidation. Each step she took toward reimagining their app felt sunlit, yet the shadow of self-doubt still loomed over her, whispering skepticism into her ear. What if this was merely a fleeting spark of bravery? What if she couldn't follow through? Emma watched her with a mix of admiration and caution. "Okay, let's break it down. What's our first step?" Her question cut through Mia's spiraling thoughts, compelling her to focus. In that moment of clarity, a bubble of adrenaline surged within her. They were no longer just two friends messing around with ideas, they were on the brink of something greater. "We need to identify what sets us apart," Mia asserted, feeling the stirrings of her previously dormant determination bubbling to the surface. "We're creating not just a platform, but a sanctuary for uncensored creativity, a place where every voice can resonate without fear of backlash." Her pulse quickened as the vision grew more vivid. She could almost see the app taking shape, a refuge for creators to thrive. Emma nodded, scribbling notes. "And we've got to ensure that our users feel seen and heard. What tools can we build to empower them?" The two women brainstormed, momentum building as ideas flowed freely.
Expanding out of their previous conversations, they discussed interactive features that would facilitate genuine connection, shared struggles, and celebratory milestones. But as the initial enthusiasm washed over Mia, a sudden wave of fear rolled in, chilling her resolve. What if they failed to deliver on their vision? What if it was just another app lost in a sea of digital noise? Each what if loomed larger than the next. "Emma, do you think we can really pull this off?" The vulnerability in her voice surprised even her. "Why not? We've done tough things before, and we know what to expect from each other," Emma replied, her faith resonating with the steadiness of a warm light. Still, Mia couldn't shake the creeping sensation that she was setting herself up for failure. This was not merely about developing an app, but confronting her deepest insecurities about being a leader, one who could be cast into a spotlight she had so often avoided. "Maybe I need to take the lead more," Mia said, pondering her evolving role as both a creator and a partner. "But what if I lost what makes us a team? What if I alienate you?" Her fear laid bare seemed to echo in the air. "Think of it this way. It's not about leading or following. It's about us harnessing our strengths together. You must trust your instincts," Emma encouraged softly, though Mia noticed the flicker of uncertainty in her partner's eyes. As they entered their brainstorming phase, plotting roadmaps and potential markets, Mia found herself wrapped in a bold energy she had scarcely known. Perhaps it was the thrill of discovery, or maybe a calling to step into her strengths rather than disguising herself in others' shadows. The conversation ebbed and flowed until the two women found themselves looking at a prototype outline, their hearts fluttering with shared ambition. They were no longer sketching ideas, they were constructing a bridge toward their future. However, as they stood in their success, a new realization surfaced, a forceful reminder that their journey would not occur on a straight path. There would be critics, potential sabotage, and pressures that had nothing to do with their shared vision. Mia's heart raced at the thought of external opposition. Would those doubts become her greatest challenge?
How could she safeguard against the crippling shame of perceived failure, especially if she was the one in the spotlight? What will we do when others challenge us or try to diminish our ideas? Mia spoke, her voice shaking slightly. Emma paused, letting the weight of Mia's question settle. We turn the criticism into our fuel. We define our narrative together. Mia took a deep breath, the resolve to face these looming challenges solidifying within her. She would no longer be merely an extension of others' ideas. She would cultivate her voice and inspire others. Just as the conversation began to shift towards a promotional timeline, Mia spotted a familiar face in the crowd.
The unmistakable figure of someone who had once been a source of mockery during her earlier creative endeavors. Her throat went dry. They were here, listening, potentially waiting for her to fail. Would her pursuit stand against their scorn, or would it all come crashing down? The journey ahead loomed daunting, yet Mia realized there was no turning back. It was time to challenge not only the voices around her, but also the echoes of her past. And as the air crackled with unspoken possibilities, Mia's declaration hung in the balance. Let's prepare for the hard stuff. We need to embrace the chaos. With newfound clarity, Mia faced what was coming, her heart racing for what lay ahead, not just in terms of the app, but within her own evolving identity. Would she embrace her legitimate potential, or would the scars of her apprehensions keep her caged? As they pressed on with their plans, the specter of her past triumphs and defeats flitted at the edges of her mind, whispering. She knew this was where the real battle began. Mia's heart hammered in her chest as she locked eyes with her old adversary. The ghost of her past loomed larger than life, and for a moment she felt herself freeze, the vibrant plans for her app flickering in her mind like a stuttering light bulb. The person who had once dismissed her ideas and laughed at her aspirations was now a living reminder of every doubt she had harbored. She turned her gaze away, focusing instead on Emma, who was scanning the crowd, oblivious to Mia's sudden paralysis. "We're on to something big, aren't we?" Emma said, her voice bubbling with optimism. Yet Mia couldn't completely shake the sense of dread that settled over her. The stakes felt impossibly higher now that the specter of her past was in the mix. "Absolutely," Mia replied, forcing the enthusiasm to surge through her voice. But inside, a storm was brewing. What if their doubters were right? What if they were deluding themselves in their belief that they could carve out a space in an already saturated market? She turned her attention back to Emma, who was methodically listing down the features they planned to implement in their app. "We can include community feedback options, right?" Emma suggested. "That way we make sure the users feel involved from the start." "Great idea," Mia exclaimed, her spirit momentarily rekindled. But in the recesses of her mind, she felt the tension rise. The more they advanced the app, the more visible they would become. And visibility translated to scrutiny. What if their best efforts were met with the laughter she had once endured? The two dove into the next brainstorming session, furiously swapping concepts and challenges, yet Mia could hardly focus. The looming presence of her past was as tangible as the papers scattered before them. What was once a source of innocent creativity now became a pressure cooker of impending judgment. Mia felt a strong urge to confront the very roots of this anxiety. "We need to create a mission statement," she said, surprising even herself. "Something that empowers us to fight against that type of negativity." Emma nodded with appreciation. "Let's capture the essence of what we're doing. We must remind ourselves why we're putting ourselves out there." Mia grabbed a notebook, her fingers trembling even as she wrote. Words began to spill out. Authenticity, resilience, a celebration of individuality. By codifying their mission, Mia conferred upon herself a level of accountability she had never embraced before.
This was no longer merely about creating an app. It was about owning her identity and rejecting the shame and doubt that others had instilled in her. Yet, just as the shimmering promise of clarity emerged, the voice of self-doubt echoed louder than before. What if their mission statement fell on deaf ears? Would they even be taken seriously? "Ready to test the waters?" Emma asked, a reassuring smile gracing her face. Mia swallowed hard, the gravity of the challenge ahead weighing on her. "I guess we'll find out." With Emma beside her, she felt at once bolstered and vulnerable, each envisioning the moments of both triumph and struggle that lay ahead. As they plotted their next steps, Mia could feel her pulse quicken with a mix of anxiety and exhilaration. Just then, that old adversary caught her eye again, laughing with a group of their mutual acquaintances, their laughter ringing out like daggers. Mia clenched her jaw and took a deep breath, shifting her focus back to Emma. "Let's launch a beta test," Mia suggested, her mind racing with the mechanics behind it. "We can get real feedback before the official rollout. That way, we'll know if we're on the right track." "You're ready," Emma encouraged, her confidence radiating. Yet, as Mia prepared for this imminent challenge, a growing realization washed over her. It wasn't just about the app or facing critics. It was about discovering her own resilience, an adventure that extended beyond the digital realm. In that moment, as the laughter of her naysayers faded into the background, Mia made a silent commitment to herself. She would not shrink in the face of potential defeat. She would confront her fears, shaping them into motivation to propel forward as she forged a new path. But as plans took form and excitement mounted, she felt a nagging uncertainty, a foreboding that perhaps her biggest battles were yet to come. What if the critics were not merely voices of the past, but actual forces standing in the way of their future? Would she be able to withstand their onslaught, or would she crumble under the pressure? Mia's heartbeat quickened again. She sensed a storm brewing just on the horizon. It was time to face what awaited her. Did she have the strength to rise to the occasion, or would she find herself lost amidst the chaos before it even began? The days following their brainstorming session flew by, each one punctuated with the echo of laughter from that gathering. Mia couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Like a shadow clung to her every move, consuming her thoughts with questions and doubts that whirred in her mind. The approach of the beta test loomed like an oncoming storm. Mia buried herself in work, meticulously crafting strategies, while Emma enthusiastically coded the app's next features. Every line of code seemed to thrum with possibility. Yet there remained an unease that unsettled Mia, gnawing at her concentration. She would catch herself staring at her laptop screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard as self-doubt twisted like a vine around her resolve. If her old adversary had the audacity to undermine her dreams once, what would prevent them from doing it again? It was during a late-night brainstorming session that a sudden realization struck her. In her attempt to combat the very negativity that had undermined her confidence, she had neglected one crucial element: self-advocacy. She needed to remind herself of who she was. "What if we incorporate a feedback loop from beta testers?" she proposed to Emma, her voice steadier now, more authoritative. "Not just about the app, but about our journey, our mission. It can empower them to connect more with us while sharing our story." Emma nodded, eyes wide with excitement. "You're onto something. It allows us to humanize what we're doing, turning that initial fear into something relatable." The energy in the room shifted. Mia felt a renewed surge of determination as they strategized how to leverage their vulnerability as a strength. Teaching users to view their journey through the lens of personal resilience would not only elevate their app, but also forge a deeper connection with the audience. This was not just an app, it was a symbol of their fight against negativity. However, as plans blossomed, the cynicism that had once plagued Mia regained its grip.
She shifted uncomfortably as thoughts of her critics invaded her focus. Would they mock this more personal approach? Or would they twist it into derision over her attempts to narrate her journey? The internal war raged on, a continuous cycle of building hope only to have it knocked down. The night of the beta launch arrived, and Mia stood in front of her laptop, ready to initiate the process. She hesitated, heart pounding in her chest. What if this was their moment of triumph, or their worst nightmare? This was the first time she would open the door to potential judgment, expose her insecurities wrapped within their creation. "Are you ready?" Emma's voice broke through her daze, filled with a mix of anticipation and concern. In that instant, Mia realized the decision before her wasn't merely about the app. It was about self-acceptance, confronting the suffocating grip of expectation and the familiar voices of doubt. She inhaled deeply, murmuring to herself the mission they'd crafted: authenticity, resilience, individuality. Her fingers were no longer trembling. They were steady, focused. "Yes," Mia said, the answer surfacing with clarity. "Let's do this." And as she clicked launch, a wave of exhilaration surged through her, lifting the weight of apprehension. The app was now open to the world, the feedback loop activated. Yet even as the initial responses fluttered in, Mia's thoughts swirled. Each notification had the potential to either affirm her growth or tear into her spirit. Would they see her newfound strength, or would she remain a target for the tenacity of her past adversaries? In that moment of liberation, a different form of pressure surfaced. She had committed herself to something far larger than just technology. She had unwittingly woven her identity into this venture. As she monitored the responses trickle in, a notification lit up her screen. A recognizable name among her old circle, one she had braced herself against. It was a review, and the words within it began to form a singular question. Did she truly think a mere app could redeem her? A chill coursed down her spine. The confrontation she had anticipated was here, and it was sharper than she had prepared for. The moment had come to face the whispers from her past with her present resolve. Would she shrink back or rise in defiance against the critique? Mia's heart raced as she stared at the review, its words cutting through her like a knife. The critic's voice, echoing from the shadows of her past, reignited those familiar fears that had long plagued her. Fear of inadequacy, fear of exposure, fear of being dismissed once again. She felt the heat of embarrassment rush to her cheeks, almost debilitating in its intensity. This was the moment she had been preparing for, yet standing on the precipice of her self-assertion felt utterly paralyzing. "Hey, it's okay," Emma said, pulling her back from the brink of despair. "It's just one review. It doesn't define us. You're already stronger than you think." But the words fell flat against the storm brewing in Mia's mind. Every syllable served only to amplify her doubts. Who were they to think they could challenge the status quo? It wasn't just about the app anymore. It was about the two of them facing a world teeming with criticism. Yet, within that tumult of emotions, a flicker of resolve began to ignite. Emma's unwavering support reminded her they weren't alone, and that camaraderie was a rare fuel for their journey. Mia took a deep breath, pushing past the heaviness that latched onto her heart. She knew she had to confront the review head-on. "Let me respond," she said, voice resonating with newfound clarity. Timer ticking, she opened the platform and began typing. Each word poured from her as a bridge, connecting the personal journey she had undertaken and the shared mission of their app. She spoke candidly about vulnerability and the struggles that defined them, recognizing that her fight was one many faced, one worth sharing. "This isn't just an app," she typed, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "It's a testament to resilience and a platform for growth." With each keystroke, Mia felt her self-advocacy strengthen, transforming her apprehension into courage and doubt into defiance. It was empowering to claim her narrative, to weave her story into the fabric of their creation. As she clicked post, her decision felt monumental. It was not merely a reply, it was a declaration. It allowed Mia to embolden herself against potential backlash, advocating not only for her work, but for her very self. She sat back, momentarily astounded by the rush of pride swelling within her. The notification dinged once more, pulling Mia's attention once again. This time, it was a supportive comment from a beta tester. They shared personal struggles that mirrored hers, expressing gratitude for the authenticity Mia and Emma had showcased. "Your story matters," they concluded. "Keep going." Mia's breath caught in her throat, a mix of joy and disbelief coursed through her. Before, she had felt vulnerable. Now, she could see that vulnerability resonated. The weight of judgment began to lift, replaced by an exhilarating lightness of spirit. They were cultivating a community, not just a product. "Did you see that?" Emma exclaimed, her enthusiasm infectious. "We touched someone. Our journey is much bigger than any negative comment." And there it was, the shift in perspective that Mia realized she had been searching for. It was not solely about proving herself in the face of adversity, but rather about nurturing the connections being forged through shared experiences. Mia contemplated this moment of connection, recognizing it marked a crucial transformation in her journey. There would be more reviews, more challenges, and perhaps even sharper criticisms, but in that single supportive message, she had unearthed the strength that lay dormant within her. However, even as excitement buzzed between her and Emma, the looming pressure of expectations returned with refined intensity. What would it take to ensure this feedback loop didn't just inspire them, but also protected their mental well-being? The next phase of this journey wasn't merely about driving engagement, it was about crafting an experience where both she and Emma could thrive, unfettered by negative energy. "What's our next move?" Mia asked, a mix of determination and apprehension lacing her voice, recognizing that this was just the beginning. Emma shrugged with a sly grin. "How about a Q&A session? Let's face the critiques head-on. It could be a way to show our growth." Mia felt her pulse quicken again, excitement competing against trepidation. Could it serve as a platform to elevate their message even further? Before she could delve deeper into her thoughts, a buzzer from her phone drew her attention. It was an incoming message from her old circle, stirring both anxiety and curiosity. Nobody had reached out in so long. The message read, "We need to talk about you and the app." A fresh wave of uncertainty crashed over her. Did this mean another confrontation was looming? Mia stared at the screen long after the message disappeared, her mind racing with questions. What could they possibly want? The silence from her old circle had been palpable. Now it felt like a loaded gun, ready to discharge its burdens all at once. Was it curiosity, concern, or something more uncomfortable? The unrelenting weight of impending confrontation settled heavily on her chest. "Are you okay?" Emma's voice sliced through her spiraling thoughts, bringing her back into the moment. Mia forced herself to nod while her internal conflict brewed. The thought of facing her old friends, the very people whose opinions had once dictated her self-worth, sent a chill down her spine. They had been the arbiters of her past, and now they seemed to be casting judgment once again. "I don't know," she finally admitted. "It feels like they're coming for me, and I don't even know why." Emma placed a reassuring hand on Mia's shoulder. "Look, this is your moment. You've already made a statement with the review. You've built something incredible here." She paused, her gaze steady. "Don't let them dictate your worth. You define who you are now." Mia inhaled deeply, allowing Emma's words to wash over her. She had fought hard to step away from their influence, but now the lingering ghosts of her past loomed ominously. "But what if they don't like what I've become? What if they think I'm a failure for going down this path? You've already risen above that, Emma said. You owe it to yourself to confront them. Don't let the fear of their perception hold you back. Remember, you are more than their expectations. With each passing moment, Mia felt a flicker of determination rekindling within her. Emma's unwavering belief provided a crucial buoy, pulling her from the depths of self-doubt. Maybe confronting her past wasn't merely about facing criticism. It was about affirming the progress she had made. From her work on the app to her newfound identity, this didn't just belong to the messy history of what was once considered failure. It belonged to her present and future aspirations. What if, Mia mused, her brain racing ahead with ideas? I invite them to the Q&A session, welcome their critiques instead of shying away. Emma raised her eyebrows, intrigued. That is a bold move. Why not take control of the narrative before they define it for you? You have a story of strength to tell, and this could be your platform. Mia's heart raced at the thought. She would embrace this confrontation, no longer recoiling from it. It felt exhilarating to take the initiative and transform a potentially painful encounter into an opportunity to showcase her growth. She could teach them what she had learned while simultaneously reminding herself of her worth. Let's do it, Mia declared, resolve hardening in her voice. I'll send out invites for the Q&A session, and I'll share this message with them too. As she drafted the invite, Mia felt a sense of clarity settling in. Each word became armor against her insecurities. It would be a chance not just to explain her choices, but to reclaim her narrative. The flicker of fear was still present, but it was no longer overpowering. Instead, it was mixed with curiosity about their reactions. Would they challenge her growth? Embrace it? Later, after sending the invites, Mia's phone buzzed again with a notification, a response from her old circle. Bring it on. We're ready to hear your spin on things. Mia's stomach formed a tight knot. As much as their acceptance was expected, would it truly come? Or was this a trap ready to spark hostility? Looks like they're not shy, Emma remarked, glancing at the screen. You've stirred them up. Yeah, but have I stirred up something I cannot control? Mia whispered, anxiety creeping in again. What if all of this blows up in my face? The weight of that question clung to her like a shadow. In the end, would she manage to uphold her newfound strength, or would past expectations drown her once more? Mia glanced at Emma, who offered a reassuring smile. You've survived the storm. You're ready for whatever follows. Mia nodded, preparing herself for the confrontation ahead. The stakes had never felt higher. Was she finally ready to reconcile her past with her future? The next day would reveal not just their opinions, but also her own authentic, evolving identity. As the sun rose on the day of the Q&A session, Mia felt the familiar tug of anxiety latching onto her. It was almost humorous, the contrast between the fierce woman she had become and the hesitant girl she used to be. Yet, when the specter of her past crept in, her resolve wavered. The invitation was out, the anticipation thick, but now doubts danced mockingly on the edges of her mind. What if she was still vulnerable to their judgments? The venue was modest, chosen to reflect the authenticity she had worked so hard to embody. Mia arrived early, her pulse quickening with each footstep that echoed against the empty walls. Emma arrived shortly after, her enthusiasm radiating like a warm beam of sunlight. This is it, Mia. You're making a statement today, she encouraged, her voice a solid foundation amidst Mia's swirling thoughts. Yeah, but what if I fail to convince them? What if my truth isn't enough? The wave of self-doubt threatened to choke her. Emma faced her, unwavering. Mia, your truth is all you need. You've worked hard, and that's what matters. Remember why you're here, not to win their approval, but to share your journey. Mia nodded, absorbing Emma's encouragement like a protective shield. As the clock ticked closer to the start time,
She replayed moments from her past, faltering in her career, questioning her choices, and the impact of her old friends' opinions. But now, those memories felt less like chains and more like stepping stones that had led her to this point of confrontation. When the familiar faces began to trickle in, Mia's heart raced. They were the same ones she once wanted so desperately to impress, yet now she felt a surge of resolve. She glanced around at them. Some looked curious, others skeptical. She understood their presence was an opportunity, not to defend herself, but to clear the air. Taking a deep breath, she stepped up to the microphone. "Thank you all for being here today. I know many of you from my past, and I'm excited to share how I've evolved since those days. This isn't just about my app, it's about growth, resilience, and facing our truths without fear." As she spoke, the words flowed with a clarity she had never anticipated. She shared the complexities of leaving behind a safe but unfulfilling life, emphasizing how the shame of past failures transformed into stepping stones toward a more authentic self. The vulnerability she displayed illuminated the room. Slowly, fingers unclenched and faces softened. One brave voice piped up from the crowd. "Mia, we've seen you succeed in various ways over the years, but this new venture, it's so different from the path you were on. Aren't you afraid it'll fail?" Mia's heart dropped momentarily, but she refocused. "Absolutely. I've questioned that more times than I can count. What I've realized is that failure doesn't define us. It's how we rise afterward that shapes who we truly are. I've experienced it, and it's honed my resilience." The tension in the air shifted. Questions came in rapid succession now, some challenging, others genuinely curious. With each response, Mia felt herself gaining momentum, confronting what lay within her as much as what lay before her. The fears that once threatened to boil over became tools for empowerment. As the session drew to a close, Mia was left with an unexpected feeling: elation. She hadn't just defended her work, she'd reframed her narrative, transforming old wounds into powerful lessons. But as she looked around at the crowd, some expressions still bore skepticism. Not everyone was on board. Some questioned whether this growth was genuine. The feeling of triumph soon mingled with a new, unsettling thought. Was she ready for the lingering doubts to resurface? Emma caught her eye, the unspoken understanding passing between them. Mia could feel the aftershocks of their reactions pulsating around her. Confrontation had merely opened a door. What lay beyond remained undefined. And as the crowd began to dissipate, Mia caught a whispered remark from the back. "Let's see how long she can keep this up." The words sent chills through her. What if the same old judgmental eyes lurked just beneath the surface, ready to drag her back down? The challenge had only begun, and now she could only wonder, was she truly prepared to fight yet again? Mia stood in the aftermath of her Q&A session, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The air crackled with a blend of excitement and uncertainty. She had laid bare her journey, confronted the past, and shared a vision that had emerged from years of struggle and resentment. But with the thrill of vulnerability came the shadow of doubt. As her old friends trickled out, she felt their skepticism linger like an unwanted specter. Would they truly see her growth, or would they continue to view her through a lens of derision? Emma approached, her face radiating encouragement. "You were incredible, Mia. You held your ground against every question. I saw the respect in their eyes, even if they didn't say it." Mia attempted a smile, but felt tugged back by the lingering weight of those whispered judgments. Could she maintain this newfound courage? Her attention turned out as she watched familiar faces melt into the crowd, judgments coiling like serpents ready to strike. However, as the evening waned, something shifted within her. Recognizing the power she had wielded, she took a deep breath and recalibrated her perspective. This was about more than personal validation. She had forged her path, and it wasn't confined to the approval of others.
It was about embodying her truth relentlessly and allowing the chips to fall where they may. Days turned into weeks, and as the beta launch continued to garner feedback, the app began to embrace its purpose, empowering creators to share their journeys honestly. Mia felt the community grow, each shared story reinforcing her initial promise of authenticity. The more she engaged, the more her confidence soared. No longer confined to a narrative rooted in judgment, she became a storyteller of resilience. Yet, the specter of her past lingered, fueling her desire to confront it head-on. Mia knew she had to return to that group of acquaintances, the very ones who had once belittled her aspirations. They needed to see the woman she had become, the entrepreneur unafraid to chase her dreams. She arranged a meetup, ready to close that chapter on her past while celebrating the strides she had made. When the day of reckoning arrived, Mia's heart raced. The venue was familiar, yet she felt a new sense of ownership. As she stepped through the door, Emma at her side, confidence radiated from her posture. They gathered at a table, and Mia took in the faces that once echoed with laughter at her expense. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice steady. "I know our past conversations weren't always favorable. I've taken some time to reflect on what that means. I've grown, but I recognize the importance of acknowledging where I came from." As the conversation unfolded, she shared the vision behind the app, pivoting toward the importance of authenticity in their lives. "I once hid behind expectations, striving for approval. But what I've come to realize is that sharing our truths can empower others, and I want to invite you to be part of that journey." Echoes of skepticism crept into the room, but this time Mia stood firm. She explained how their voices shaped her narrative yet didn't define her. One of the stars from her old circle, who she had deemed the harshest critic, raised an eyebrow but held her gaze. "And how do you plan to make this stick?" Mia took a deep breath. "By continuing to share our stories, by reminding each other of our strength. I'm not asking for validation, but collaboration. We are all more than our pasts." To her surprise, the discussion shifted. The familiar faces began to share their thoughts, revealing struggles of their own. Slowly but surely, walls commenced to warm, and what began as an icy scrutiny transformed into a budding sense of community. Mia had not merely entered the space to defend herself, but to forge connections that transcended previous judgments. As the meeting concluded, the once skepticals approached, their eyes softened with understanding. "Perhaps we could learn from each other," one confessed, extending a tentative hand. Mia felt a surge of empowerment she had never experienced before. This wasn't about victory, it was about fostering unity. With each handshake, each nod of acknowledgement, she solidified her role, not as a girl defined by her past, but as a voice of inspiration. The event marked a pivotal point in her journey, where not only did she encounter acceptance, but she also strengthened her identity. She emerged with a sense of belonging rooted not in others' perceptions, but in her self-advocacy. With renewed determination fueling her spirit, Mia envisioned the future. The app thriving, a community of creators empowered, and the courage to stand boldly without requiring anyone's approval. She had conquered the challenges of her insecurities to build something meaningful and true. This was just the beginning. With passionate resolve, she would continue creating, rallying others to encapsulate their truths through the very platform they had built together. Mia had transcended her fear, transformed her narrative, and emerged as not only a creator, but an architect of change. Now was the moment to harness that energy, drive her passion, and invite others to follow along. The horizon was limitless, waiting for her brilliant vision to unfold. And so she did. Don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. You need to subscribe now. Leave a like now to show your support for this journey and fuel the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about Mia's journey.
Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second.